Thank you for having me to co-host this event, and also the excellent speakers that they are with us today for their participation and the great work that they have achieved. We are already actually 2 years into the path of the digital decade. We have 8 years left to pave the way for the digital transformation that our society and economy requires. And I would say these are critical crossroads. We have to get it right, as if we do, digitalization and digital technologies can empower citizens and give them more opportunities, foster innovation, create business opportunities, resilient business opportunities across sectors, transform our lives and every sector of our economy, bring us closer to our climate targets, and strengthen our leadership in the geopolitical way. And of course, in the light of the pandemic, we all understand that we really need to get it right to get and have our lives back. So if we get it wrong, the consequences can be paramount, actually. The tendency is to suffer from inequalities, that they will increase furthermore with the use of these technologies, and plenty of people might be left behind. I would say it would be also a missed opportunity for our economy in general, but also the European economy, and it could be a problem for our global competitiveness and sovereignty. And these are the words that now are in everybody's mouth in Europe. So since we talk about transformation in all the sectors, I'd say that the digital principles we have seen and Declaration on Digital Rights really highlight what's mostly important. It talks about putting people in the center. I think it really is important to highlight that, and especially at the top of our priority: solidarity and inclusion, freedom of choice, the way to participate. Not everybody is connected. Safety, security, and empowerment. I just finished working on the NIS2 directive, and we have to move actually faster because things are evolving even much faster than the legislation is evolving. And sustainability. I think we all understand that this is the prism through which we have to see everything now, and especially all our budget going to. I think what is also fundamental is that since I would say half, but maybe let's say 4 out of 10 Europeans, they are not even aware that they have rights such as freedom of expression, privacy, or non-discrimination, that it must be respected online. And they even lack basic digital skills. Also, with the pandemic, they really had to go digital in order to overcome the basic barriers that they faced for their to continue being working and being active in the digital economy. And I could highlight also the fact, also now here we are like 2 women, for example, but actually 20% of ICT specialists are female. We really need to achieve more. And furthermore, we have only, I would say, 60% of the European households and less than a third in rural areas that they have this coverage that we are aiming to have. And I think this is basically the reason why the Commission had this declaration proposed to ensure that our values are guaranteed online. And I think especially media freedom, that will be followed also by legislation, has been essential. It endorses fundamental principles like technological and net neutrality, universal access to the internet, the need to enhance digital skills and competencies, combat disinformation, and provide sustainable by design digital solutions. Now, this declaration is meant to be signed by the Commission, the Parliament, and the Council in order to, let's say, safeguard Europe's commitment to a human-centered digital transition and have also a common vision of the digital world we really want to build. It also, in this way, I think it represents a big opportunity to become a global benchmark and the guiding tool for EU diplomatic action, and also to try to, let's say, promote with what we do other regions into placing human rights at the center of the digital transformation. And trust me, I've been in contact with countries that we don't really come in contact with Europe, and they are following our example already. So I think it's really crucial to do our best in this case. And as a policymaker, I think that we need to ensure that we are shapers and not products of models, and we need to retain indeed our autonomy and have the right to choose. So I was chairing for 5 years the Science and Technology Options Assessment, and what I really learned in the heart of what I do is that we need to provide options to citizens, and we need to have the freedom of choice. So I will try to follow closely now on the European Parliament side how it's going to proceed, and how we're going to have this discussion also today to understand what are the challenges that we might face, and ensure that it's going to be ambitious. We are having also the Artificial Intelligence Act in our hands. We have the Data Act now, and several files that are coming. So I think we have a lot of ambitions, and I want to thank you, and I can't wait to have this discussion with you. And EIF, I believe it plays a crucial role, since it's like this amazing interface to understand policymaking, to understand what's happening in our economy, and to ensure that we will be proactive. So thank you so much, Maria, and I'm happy to wait for the discussion.
Thank you very much, Eva, for setting the scene so well for the discussion. You have touched upon so many important points already. Let's now give the floor to Werner Stengg, European Commission.
Hello and good morning, everybody. And I hope you can still hear and see me, because just 2 minutes ago, connectivity let me down, and I almost lost you. You see how important connectivity is these days. Otherwise, I would be excluded from this conference, which would be a pity. Because thank you so much for organizing this, also Eva, because this declaration of rights and principles for us, for me, for my boss, is a very, very important undertaking. Eva, you said that we are 2 years in the digital decade, which is very right. As much as we're already 2 years in the mandates of this parliament and this commission, and also 2 years in this dreadful COVID pandemic, we already started out actually 2 years ago with saying something very similar that we now just said in this declaration. You may remember that we came out with our digital strategy already after 3 months. This was in February 2020, just before COVID broke loose in Europe. And we called it Shaping Europe's Digital Future. And the very first objective in this strategy was technology that works for people. And the quote from this was, every citizen, every employee, every business person has a fair chance wherever they live to reap the benefits of our increasingly digitized society. That's exactly what you said in your introductory statements as well. The first manifestation of this at the same time, if you remember, was the white paper on AI, when we called for trustworthy AI, reflecting people's safety, rights to privacy, non-discrimination, and things like this. So that has been guiding us from day one of this, under this mandate, if you want. Then came the COVID pandemic. And as we all know, of course, accelerated the digital transformation in all aspects of our lives, professional as much as private, which meant, of course, that all the opportunities that digital technologies bring obviously also accelerated, but also the risks associated with them. The risks have not gone away, quite on the contrary, but also our increasing dependency on digital. Of course, the more everyone is digital, professionally and privately, the more you need to be part of it, whether you're a business, an employee, or a citizen. So the learnings from COVID, and Eva, you referred to this as well, first was one of capacities, resilience to quickly enhance Europe's capabilities in digital, from digital technologies, infrastructures to skills. But the second is to make digital inclusion our key objective, to ensure that no one is left behind, or at least everyone has a fair chance of being part of this transformation. And we followed this up just 6 months ago, 9 months ago, with the Digital Decade communication, which was a bit of an update of our digital strategy, also in the light of COVID. And in this Digital Decade communication, you will remember we had the Digital Compass, which was all about investments and targets for our successful digital transformation. And then we announced already to what we're discussing today, this Declaration of Rights and Principles. Now, in the compass, in the investment part of our strategy, we of course also focused on the things that matter to people. It's about skills, it's about infrastructures, including connectivity. It's about getting our companies, also smaller ones, online. It's about improving our public services. So there is a very, very strong link between the two, quite obviously. Now, the declaration itself, if you read it in its first chapter, you will, of course, obviously find that people should be at the center of the digital transformation, that technology should serve and benefit all Europeans, empower them to pursue their aspirations in full security and respect of their fundamental rights. So we could have stopped there, actually, because that's what it is all about. But obviously, we did not do that. But we then followed up with a rather short list of examples of what principles and rights we have in mind. Because they're only examples. We could have written a document 3 times the size of what you see before you. It's also a document, obviously, that has no legal status as such. It does not enshrine any new rights that people would not already have today, or announce new policies that have not been out there either. So it is a reminder of things you find in a treaty, like our fundamental freedoms and rights. But we want to be sure that our rights are respected online as much as they are respected offline. You find references indirectly to secondary legislation that's already there, GDPR, copyright, whatever, a long catalog of relevant laws. You find references to laws that are being negotiated as we speak, or not to laws, but very much the objectives pursued by those laws, whether it's in the Digital Services Act, transparency about algorithms, greater control over your lives, over your data. You'll find references to objectives pursued by the AI Act and many others. But then, of course, also policies, not just laws, it's not just rights, it's also things that we would want people to have by 2030, like full access to first-class education and skills, to connectivity, to public services, to an EID that is safe and protected, and so on and so forth. So no new rights, but we hope this will be once hopefully shared with us by Parliament and the Council in its objectives. It will be a powerful reference framework for all of us. It will inform us as citizens. Eva already said Eurobarometer surveys have shown that citizens don't really know what rights they enjoy online. It will guide policymakers, lawmakers in devising new laws, in implementing existing laws, in enforcing existing laws. It will guide private organizations, companies, because they know what is being expected of them and what will be watched very closely. It will also hopefully shape global initiatives, which go very much in the same direction. And once again, we would want to set the frame here to show what Europe thinks the internet should be for people. And the important thing about monitoring is, of course, that what is being watched closely also usually gets done more than things that are not being watched in all of our interests. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Werner, for telling us more about the declaration, but also reminding us all of the raison d'être and of its objectives. Now the floor goes to Konstantinos Komaitis with Brave New Software Project.
Thank you very much, Rosa. Good morning, everyone. I would like to thank the European Internet Forum for putting this event together and for inviting me to share my thoughts on the need for digital rights and principles. During her opening remarks at 2021 Digital Assembly, leading the digital decade, President von der Leyen said, amongst others, "We believe in a human-centered digital transformation." Indeed, there is something profoundly human about the internet. The ability of independent networks to set their own rules while adhering to minimum standards that ensure interoperation is parallel to the democratic attributes of human autonomy, expression, and participation. This basic architectural design, however, is often taken for granted. Current regulatory attempts from around the world, including in Europe, often seem to assume that the internet can't break, that it just works out of magic. The same way democratic societies have rules, so does the internet. And this becomes particularly important as new internet models emerge that seek to displace, replace, or generally undermine the internet. It is for this reason that the timing of the Declaration on Digital Rights and Principles for the Digital Decade is so very important. It is a challenging time for the internet. This technology, which has transformative qualities, as we know, is currently being used as a weapon to threaten democracies and undermine users' rights. For the past few years, Europe has been a global leader, insisting on the need for regulation and clear rules that will allow the exercise of user rights, while at the same time encourage innovation and economic growth. Striking this balance is not easy, given that a lot of the business models currently in place are designed around surveillance capitalism, and they are the outcome of strong network effects and economies of scale. In this regard, the effort made by the European Commission and Europe's willingness to commit to digital rights and principles is certainly commendable. The declaration touches on almost all major points that are in need for immediate attention. It places people at the center of digital transformation. It highlights the need for connectivity and digital skills, and it recognizes the need for users to be able to exercise their human rights within a secure internet environment. None of these aspirational goals can be fulfilled, however, without an open, decentralized, and global internet. You see, there are various ways of networking. China's way of networking is one of them, but the internet way is rather unique. The internet is premised on a set of fundamental properties. Engineers awkwardly call them invariants because they remain constant over time. The internet can evolve, but these properties stay the same. This is what makes the internet so powerful. No matter how it changes, its properties remain unchanged. But this internet is not a given, nor can it withstand coordinated attacks. The internet is not a monolith, nor should it be treated as one. Its constant evolution, growth, and innovation is a direct consequence of its original design. The internet's properties are a mix of aspirational goals and pragmatic design choices, and are significant because without them, none of the goals listed in the declaration can be fully materialized. Let's run through these properties briefly. The property of having a common protocol, the internet protocol, ensures an accessible infrastructure. The property of interoperability ensures an open architecture that can address security concerns effectively and without constraint. The internet's distributed routing system ensures its integrity and resilience. The choice of having common identifiers, what today is the domain name system, assists in the internet's global nature. And last but not least, the internet's general purpose ensures the internet can support a wide range of demands for its use. These properties, aside from facilitating internet networking, they also facilitate users' freedom of choice, user participation and empowerment, as well as a fair and secure environment. They ensure a resilient digital environment during the COVID pandemic. Unlike humanity, the internet was ready for this pandemic. The flip side of not having these properties is an internet that is based on top-down control, where innovation is directed by a central authority, which is also responsible for determining what users can and cannot do. This is the China model, and currently, at the international level, there is an ongoing debate as to which model will prevail. Because of this, Europe has a unique opportunity. As it sets the rules for the road, it must pay tribute to these foundational properties. The thing that has made the internet so transformative is deceptively simple. On the internet, each node participates voluntarily, so the whole does not rely on transitive relationships among participating parties. Voluntary interoperation without central authority is the core strength. None of this should come as a surprise to any of you, but it is important to remember how deeply radical it all is. Europe's vision for the internet is one based on democratic ideals. An internet that departs from its original architectural principles cannot be a democratic one. So my recommendation today would be to have these design principles enshrined in the declaration document and any other piece of primary or secondary legislation that emerges in the future. It is simply the only way to ensure that people are at the center of the internet. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Konstantinos, for reminding us of the human-centric approach that we have here in Europe, an important one, and also for highlighting how the internet was ready for a pandemic while we weren't, and it's very much helping us through it, indeed. Now the floor goes to Sylvie Bollini, Council of Europe.
Thank you very much. It's a great pleasure to be here to share with you about the Council of Europe activities regarding children's rights in the digital environment. Succeeding at home and in the world sounds like a great child-friendly program. The internet indeed is an open door which brings the world to children's homes with its opportunities, but also risks. We must applaud the Commission's will to set out digital ambitions for 2030 in the current difficult context, from which, however, we learned a lot about the impact of the digital space on children. More than ever, we are aware that knowledge of and access to technologies are essential for children's development. The Council of Europe has been working for the respect and enhancement of children's rights in the digital world since the early 2000s, and reference to ICTs can be found in all its strategies for the rights of the child. In both the declaration and the digital compass, I found some recurrent words that are at the core of our approach, like freedom, safety, inclusion, participation, and empowerment. I will mention only some of the instruments and tools which have been developed. First, legally binding ones, like the European Convention for Human Rights, which mentions freedom of expression and the right to private and family life, which should also apply online. The Convention on Protection of Children Against Sexual Exploitation and Sexual Abuse, known as Lanzarote Convention, and the Conventions on Cybercrime and on Data Protection. However, to really uphold the rights of the child, we know that legal standards are not enough. That is why they were complemented by more specific instruments, such as the 2018 Guidelines to Respect, Protect, and Fulfill the Rights of the Child in the Digital Environment, which provide for guidance on how to shape a digital world with and for children, following a strategic approach, together with its implementation handbook for policymakers. They cover different categories of children's rights, trying to reach balance between capacity building and protection. States must take measures to address risk, for example, by safety with, for example, the safety by design and privacy by design approaches, and are encouraged to involve private companies when developing policies. In the context of the pandemic, the organization developed guidelines on children's data protection in an education setting to alert on the challenges, children's private life and personal data protection. Moreover, the Lanzarote Convention's Monitoring Committee highlighted the long-lasting harmful impact of sexual offenses against children facilitated through the use of ICTs, given the fact that child sexual abuse material remains and can continue to circulate forever. The committee is now working on automatic detection. Coming back to the title of this debate, how to succeed? It is easier to build strong children than to repair broken men, said Frederick Douglass. The digital compass rightly stresses the importance of empowerment. Building strong children needs intervention at all levels and in all the spheres where they live and act. Therefore, we try to develop specific instruments. Council of Europe legal standards are complemented with tools for educators, parents, and children. The work on digital citizenship education is one of the responses that we provide as an organization. New technologies are not only a threat, they allow children to interact, study, create. We should therefore allow children to take all advantages from ICTs. And it was said previously that citizens do not always really know about their rights they have online. Well, we are working on that. For instance, we issued a leaflet for children and young people called Learn About Your Rights in the Digital Environment and a parenting guide in the digital age. 2, we focus on equal opportunities. As Vice President Kaili said, no one should be left behind. Internet should be an equalizer and accessible to all children, and actually it can really be. The Council of Europe commissioned a report entitled 2 Clicks Forward and 1 Click Back, which describes how the digital environment can be an enabler that brings significant added value to children with disabilities. Third, we involve children. To ask children for their opinion and experiences, involving them when it comes to content and design, not only as consumers, is the best way to find out how to accompany and guide them in the digital environment. Or maybe, as digital natives, they can guide us. The potential of ICTs is most probably not sufficiently used to this respect, for instance, concerning children's democratic engagement. If we really want to ensure overall children's well-being in the digital world, we need to build a child-centered virtuous circle, which shall include policymakers, educators, parents, business enterprises, and of course, children who have a lot to teach adults with their creativity and adaptability skills. Therefore, and finally, we develop partnerships with a multi-stakeholders approach. So far, we acted mainly in a public context, but we are trying to involve and develop synergies with the private sector. We also need political commitment, of course, commitment to action. The declaration mentions cooperation between international organizations as well, which is, I think, exactly what we are doing today and we do on a regular basis. Just for you to know that the EU delegation took part actively in the elaboration of the incoming Council of Europe strategy for the rights of the child 2022-2027. My deepest thanks for inviting me and best wishes for the endorsement of the declaration and forthcoming work, which will surely be beneficial to all European citizens and inspirational to others. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sylvie, for putting the focus on children and on all the ongoing initiatives and tools that are there to protect them and enable them at the same time. Now the floor goes to Jakob Greiner with Deutsche Telekom.
Yeah, thank you very much. Good morning. Thanks to the EIF colleagues for hosting this, and of course, Eva Kaili and also my co-panelists. I have the challenge now to cherry pick some of those principles, because these principles are so manifold and so many are actually of relevance to my company, be it AI, be it sustainability, child protection, digitizing the public sector. I mean, in general, these principles are very, very welcome from our side, because as Eva said, it puts the people at the center of digital transformation. And I think it's not a difficult equation to say that digital transformation will only happen if we take those profiting from it along this journey. Otherwise, it will just fail. And I, of course, as a telco, need to talk about connectivity. So this is the first principle I'm going to pick. We have in the digital decade quite some ambitious targets. We have the ambition of a gigabit in every household, 5G in all connected areas by 2030. And we also have an ambition in the digital principles laid out that everybody and everyone everywhere should be connected with affordable but also high-speed connectivity. And yes, of course, we agree and we are working hard to satisfy this ambition. If you take Germany, for example, we have committed to invest over 30 billion just in fiber until 2030. But there is a but. We also need to have the right framework conditions at European level supporting us in doing so. The telecom sector in Europe is facing a challenge. We need to be the motor of digital transformation, rightfully so. We have expectations to invest more than ever, rightfully so. And at the same time, the expectation is to have high-speed connectivity, but also low consumer prices. And at the same time, you have data skyrocketing over our networks with a predicted increase of 30% per year for the years to come. And it was mentioned in the pandemic, the internet was there and didn't collapse indeed. But we see this trend of increased traffic that will just accelerate over the years. So what framework conditions do we need? Well, I'm going to break it down to really what the Commission has to offer for that. I see two initiatives that will be on the plate and table of the Commission this year. One of them is the revision of the Broadband Cost Reduction Directive. The name says it all. We very much look forward to this directive because you can invest as much as you want, but if rollout of connectivity gets seriously delayed by very burdensome long permit granting procedures, in some cases taking more than 10 months to get something deployed, then we have not only an investment, but also an execution problem. And we expect from the revision of this directive that, for example, for 5G, we get a much faster and simpler rollout procedure. That also means that we, for example, get access to public buildings, to rooftops, and of course, speeding up those permit granting procedures. Doing that in 3 months and not in 10 months would already be really beneficial to get these things deployed in Europe. And we also very much welcome as a second initiative the revision of state aid rules for broadband. Why is it necessary? Because there are new ambitious targets for 2030, and therefore the Commission needs to update these guidelines. But while funding is, of course, needed and welcome, especially in rural areas where we do not yet have enough connectivity, as Eva pointed out, these rules should also avoid crowding out private initiatives where we are already or plan to deploy internet. So state aid needs to be a last resort whenever the private sector is not investing in deployment enough. Lastly, and there we hope to see an initiative from the Commission, I refer to the increase of data traffic over our networks. We have more than 70% of all traffic caused by video streaming, social media, and gaming. And this only caused by a handful of big content providers. This causes us continuous build out of our network capacities to be able to cope with the traffic that is increasing in order to be able to transport it to the consumer. But while the consumer prices, of course, shall remain low and network operators spend a lot of money to increase their capacity, the ones benefiting from it pay at the moment little or nothing to increasing the digital infrastructure capacity. And this, in our view, has to change. There needs to be some form of a paradigm shift of how the internet works today. And that's why we really appreciate that in the EU draft declaration of the Commission picks this up and addresses this point, committing to develop adequate frameworks so that all market players contribute fairly to the cost of digital infrastructure. These are three elements that we believe can build an enabling framework. Last point, do we set a standard with these principles across the world? I think yes. Some of them have already been mentioned, the initiatives, be it the DSA, be it a human-centric approach of AI, which is also a bit, comparing to the GDPR, potentially setting a global standard. And lastly, I like to pick European digital identity, because I think it's a very important example to highlight. This is not only to the benefit of the individual who has an alternative to social login models that come mostly from overseas. It can also accelerate the digitization of the public sector by facilitating processes that we all have to fight with as citizens. And also the private sector who is willing, and my company is part of this, who is willing to contribute to having eID solutions also displayed in private offerings. Take, for example, how to sign up to a mobile phone contract without having to go to the shop, showing the ID and all these things that you normally do. So I think the initiatives in those principles are not only benefiting consumers, but they have the consumer at the heart. And we applaud you for that. And now look forward to discussion. Thanks.